So for those that were at the first one, or maybe if you weren't even at the first one, the subject of desire to influence and mentor others, that's almost like, yeah, no kidding. But do you have any examples from the audience where you took somebody under your wing and they changed the trajectory of the organization, or you took somebody under your wing and they let you down, and then what do you do? Anybody have any? Yes, sir.
Oh, about 17 years ago, I had a guy that worked for me part-time in a fire extinguisher business. He was just a part-time fire extinguisher guy, and came on full-time because he hated his degree. And so he left college and came on with us, and he came to me and informed me he wanted to go to the Coast Guard. And I said, no, you're gonna be running this place someday. You can't do that to me. I basically want to get you into management sometime and everything else. He was scared to death. He left my office. He's like, that's it, I'm quitting tomorrow. Came in tomorrow, the next day, with a letter of resignation. That's all I said, be careful how you do this, I guess. I was able to shred that letter. He ended up becoming the manager of the, I did it right in front of him. And he ended up becoming the manager of the inspection and test department. And now he's in charge of all operations. He would be like a VP of operations or something like that. So he oversees now 5 managers, 6 managers, and he actually does literally run all the operations for our company.
So pick up on that for a second. Maybe this is the mentoring trait and also the self-confidence trait. So Jamie said, maybe jokingly, he shredded the resignation letter. So what happens when somebody that you've mentored and invested in and they decide they're going to go do something else? What do you do? How do you handle that? As a leader, how do you handle that?
So I had a gentleman that he was came to me right out of the Marines, very sharp individual, very good programmer. Came to me on the locksmith side of my business, mentored him, brought him on, spent 8 years with him. Again, similar to you, Jamie, he'll be a guy that could run my business. And then, ironically, last September, I gave you 2 weeks notice because as we are a growing company, I just couldn't compete with some of the benefit packages. And he ended up leaving to go to one of my largest competitors to run their operation. And I thought to myself, I literally built him to go and run somebody else's company because he didn't have any of that skill set on the management side. And I said, I'll just take the high road. And I have always told my employees, look, it's all a journey. We're going to come and we're going to go. And I just got to do the right thing. And him and I still talk on a weekly basis. And actually, he had 2 locksmiths that didn't fit for him, and he referred them down to me. And so it's still a great relationship, but people are people, and they got to do what they got to do to support their families. So it was a decision that he had to make for his family, and I had to support it.
Yeah, and it's the way you should handle it. I would hope that's the way I would handle it. I'm sure that's the way you would hope you would handle it too. I had a situation, I was running not my company now, I was running a very large corporate consulting practice back in the mid-2000s, and our clients were American Express and T-Mobile and Nokia and big global brands, and I had about 100 very credentialed, way smarter than I am, literally way smarter than I am, way more educated, degreed, pedigreed consultants, multiple offices around the world who were part of my corporate consulting organization. And one of them, who was a direct report to mine, ran a number of our large corporate account teams. And the teams ranged from 4 or 5 people to a dozen or more people on the teams. And her name's Sarah. And Sarah is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And Sarah decided she was going to leave the business, and she is now the CEO of the United States Olympic Committee. And her name's Sarah Hirschland. You can look it up. It's valid. I'm not making this story up. And Sarah was probably 40 when she got that job about 3 years ago. And I couldn't be prouder. And did it hurt us? Yeah. Was it the right thing for her and the right thing for U.S. Olympic and Paralympic athletes and their families? Because she's terrific. It's a wonderful thing. So hopefully you have stories like that where you can look at somebody who used to be under your mentorship and they blossomed in their career.
You know, it's also tough when you've mentored somebody like you have, and then they give you notice and they go to a competitor. It's one thing if they join the military or if they're moving somewhere else because of a spouse or significant other, but it's tough, right? It's how you handle that exit, I think, that separates leaders from
Bosses.
yeah, bosses. It's great. There is a good possibility that that individual could return to you at some point. And so you always keep that door open. I'm dealing with a situation now with a client who set up an ESOP program for some of his employees to purchase, and the 3 employees just walked out. So they don't want to purchase it. This owner's been absentee, and now those 3 employees are pilfering other employees, and they are contacting big accounts. So instead of him, the owner's playing hardball, the consultant plays hardball, and that's sometimes what we need to do. We need to step in and work with the attorneys and send the letters and be CC'd and help guide those companies through that time. Employees are fickle, right? They're just fickle. And you don't know why they're going to leave. We're going to talk a little bit about why employees leave in a few minutes, but we'll come back to that.
So the next section, which was trait number 4, is ethical and moral character and values and ethics. So again, this is unrehearsed. Just throw out 1 or 2 words that you think as a leader that your organization has to have in their relationship with you from an ethical, moral, principled perspective.
Trust.
Okay, well you all came up with, in my view, the right one. So how do you build trust? How do you build trust throughout your organization? Do you have to
Accountability.
Yeah.
You said accountability. Transparency.
We talked about that earlier.
Do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Boy, that's a good one. That's a good one. I have a client in this industry, not in this room, that 2 hours ago, one of the senior leaders, not the owner, said to me on a phone call, it's so bad, I know that one of these days the owner's going to come in and he's going to tell us we're selling refrigerators. And they're in the security industry. So do y'all have your version of selling refrigerators, that it's the Kmart blue light special of the day? We're going to do that. No, we changed. We're going to do this. That may be easy for you to. That could be a panel manufacturer decision. It could be, we're going to be in DIY. No, we're not. It could be any number of things. That consistency word, oh my goodness, is critically important.
75% of employees ranked integrity as the most important attribute of a leader. We talked earlier, those of you in session 1, I said I was going to rate these. To me, that's number 1. It's not perseverance, it's not intellect, it is integrity. And I've had those discussions with a few of people in this room lately, because that integrity for someone that this individual and I both know has been broken, and it has been sleepless nights for me. Person doesn't work for me, but I know this person's influence, and it's devastating. And for me to feel that way, just think of your employees. We talked earlier about Mike Tino, and Mike said, Kirk, you always have my back. And that was such a compliment to me. It was really such a compliment. You and I talked on the phone over the weekends, right? And we were not the leaders we are now. Matter of fact, I've done some things in leadership roles I've not been proud of, where I have not supported people in my early days, where I may have misled a manager to make them think I was better than I really was. And I have to tell you, I am not proud of those moments, but I think what it has is when you and I talked, I mean, it was a great Sunday conversation. It made us better leaders today. So integrity to me is without a doubt the most important attribute of a leader.
Do you guys, there's another cliche that I won't tell you what I think about it. There's another cliche, the customer's always right. Are they? So what do you do when they're wrong? You're the leader. What do you do when they're wrong?
Tell them.
You say they're right and you take care of them.
If you got to decide between a customer and employee, where are you going to decide? Are you really? Are you really? Easy to say. Who said I have? Gentleman in the front row. I'm sorry, your first name? Mark? Tell us about you have. Talk loudly, you're on video and audio.
I had a customer on the golf course who every time he came in, and we're brand new in this space, we're in the communications business, so we're a little bit different than everybody else, but he would come in for service, and every time he made my techs feel belittled. And this particular day, he came in an extra foul mood, and one of my very good techs gave me an ultimatum, and I fired the customer. I called him and fired him.
So, good for you. Was that easy or hard to do?
It was very difficult, but it was the right thing.
Anybody else have a story like that where you fired a customer? Go ahead, Brad.
Well, I think all your good employees know where your bad ones are right off the bat. I mean, just to basically say that is most people in your organization know who the star performers are. So either you know you don't do anything bad as a leader, or you choose to ignore it. And neither one gives you credibility, right? So you have to, when you're pushed into those situations, they present themselves. And the reality is that, you know what, customers are maybe, and we walk away from Microsoft, but you know, they just, and there's other companies that just want to stand on your throat, big name companies, tech companies, that really it's all about, you know, a transactional relationship. And I would say never fall to just a dollar value, because then you start to erode the foundation, talk about the pillars and the foundation of building a successful organization. You can't do that, you know, and if they think you'll sell the employees out for the revenue, that's a problem.
Yeah, I want you all to hear what he's saying. I'm going to give you one of the most difficult moments in my career, but in hindsight, one of the top 5 moments in my career. I was at Office Depot, and we had a little customer whose name was GE, and that included all of the GE entities. And we were implementing a major system for GE, and we had a national account team that managed the relationship. The national account team was led by a woman. Most of the team, our team, were women, and I kept hearing stories about how belligerent and insulting they were, and I had a phone call with them, and the behavior didn't change. So I went to the chairman of Office Depot and said, I want to fire them. and he did this little calculation in his head as to what that impact on earnings per share would be. And I say that because they spent about $300 million in pens and pencils and computers and the like. So it's not a little number. And I went and fired GE. I went to Connecticut and fired them. And I got to tell you, the loyalty from the team was worth more than one earnings per share. That was really hard to do. So, good.
John?
I was going to share that. I think as you grow in a company and you get into that maturity level where you know it's okay to actually fire a customer, because look, we all can talk about workforce development challenges and issues, and retention and so forth. And as Steve said, you know, when you do show that support, that you've got that employee's back, how that resonates through the rest of your culture and what that investment now does. But who hasn't been, when you've not been in business long enough to understand when the customer's not always right. I mean, that's what it is for me. I definitely have learned that years ago, and you guys have heard me share along the way where I put my cell phone number out there. It's on our website. I put it in our radio advertisements. So I may not be there every day. My phone works. If there's a question or problem, billing, whatever that issue is, and they don't feel like it's been resolved, I want to know. So I may then find out that Scott on my team had a bad day, you know, but he's a human being, and who knows what's going on with his family, life, health, who knows? But at the end of the day, you've got the culture and the team that you know. You may have a one-off scenario that needs to be addressed in some fashion so that the customer is right in some of those cases. And more than anything, sometimes they just want to be heard. But definitely the amazing of the freedom, being a sales guy, to have that freedom to fire customers, not that it's a fun thing to do, but it's a very relieving thing to do, and it's absolutely the right thing to do.
yeah. Just go ahead.
Let me tell you quickly my GE story. We'll just continue on the GE realm. So I worked, I worked at GE, right? So
What years were you there?
yeah, I remember you leaving, and they were mad at some bald guy.
I wasn't bald then.
So I was on the intrusion side. My boss and I were brought into Indianapolis to work with the Carrier guys, the big Carrier air conditioning, who was owned, no, it was UTC at that time. So GE had sold to UTC. So UTC, we go up there, and the Carrier folks want to own the home. They say, we're gonna have these thermostats in the home, and we wanna own the home, and security's gonna report up to us, right? This is how we're gonna do it. So I said, that's interesting. So the fight was on, right? And after 2 days, I make the call and say, no, we're not gonna do it this way. Now, we are probably a $2.3 billion business, very, very small on the scale. They were 10 times my size. I went to Greg Burge, who we talked about earlier, my CEO, and said, well, this may be my last day at GE. And he goes, what are you talking about? Why are you leaving? I said, no, you may be firing me because I just told your counterpart no, who was also a GE corporate officer. He goes, you made the right decision, I got your back. It is a matter of having that integrity. I didn't make the decision because I was mad at Carrier. I made the decision because that was the right decision. And he had our back. 75% of employees believe that integrity is the most important issue in terms of leadership. Never, ever forget that, and never give up your integrity.
What if your employees are wrong?
You know what? That's a great counseling moment. And I want to come back to what you were saying earlier. I loved what you said. If I had been there, probably I would have made the same decision in terms of firing the customer. I would have brought that employee back in my office, sat them down with no one around, said, if you ever threaten me, you're going to leave again. You will be out of here before the door hits you in the arse, right? That's what I would have done. I said, don't ever doubt that I will back you up if you make the right decision. So I think what we need to do is you need to have parameters, right? It's like the Ritz-Carlton, right? They have parameters of what the employees can do at Ritz-Carlton in terms of when things go wrong, you back up your people.
$2,000
$2,000 credit per employee if things go wrong. That's the person that parks the car, cleans the pool, does the gardening, or the general manager. So we need to develop those sort of traits within our company. Never, ever vary and never give up that integrity. You will never get it back. It's a lifetime of work to get there, and you can lose it in a day. Let's move on.
Here, I got one more. Here's a question for the room. How often have you ever, and if the answer is yes, how often do you talk to your workforce and show them what's important to you morally, ethically, spiritually? How often, if you've ever done it, have you done it? And if you have, how often do you do it? So they really know what their leader stands for.
So we have 5 core.
Go ahead, Lucas.
So we have 5 core values in our company: attitude, responsibility, integrity, servanthood, and excellence. And we define those values. And then every morning, it's mandatory. We have about a 5 to 15 minute phone call. And we go around and everybody in the company highlights somebody on that core value every day. Okay, now these are core values that we came up with, that they know that I live and breathe and eat and sleep. And one of our passions for the company, and then we end the call every day with our passion, which is to influence an industry, impact people's lives, and be the best. And so, to answer your question, how often do we say that? It's every day, right? And even we use Slack, and so every day it's hey, check out this install. Brad was excellent at this. Look at the wiring on the panel, and there's all these comments that are flying. So it's a part of our DNA of the glue of our company, and so we talk about it all the time. I mean, it's an everyday deal. If we're individually, if I go out in the field and install with the technicians, which I do time to time just for fun, I'm riding with them and we're talking about it.
Are you talking about work, or are you talking about heart?
We're talking about heart.
Heart and soul and belief and position. And look, it's a tough world we're living in right now. I mean, there's so many issues where there are dramatically different perspectives. And I'm not talking about being a leader that addresses those controversial issues where you got to take a stand that could be an alienating stand. But my view is they need to know that you're struggling with the same issues they're struggling with, and it breaks your heart that we are at war internally as much as we are. And what can we do as an organization, just in our little pocket of the world, to not perpetuate those wars? Guys, I think this kind of goes back to the transparency thing. I think the more you have visibility to your people and you're real with them and they understand ethically, morally, spiritually, and I say spiritually intentionally, I think you're going to be a better leader. Go ahead.
No, I agree. I could agree more. Next is something that number 5 is intelligence. And I know I was going to ask for comments, but you guys can't say anything during this session. Intelligence, right? I tend to believe, to me personally, that's probably one of the lower of the 6 we're talking about today. That does not mean you have to have a degree. Intelligence to me is a lot more important than book smart. Intelligence to me is reading people and understanding what motivates them, understanding what motivates your clients, and putting the two together.
Can I jump on right there?
You bet.
So at lunch today, Stan, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, to repeat the story that you told me about when you went to your boss and introduced the idea that you had about the expos and how he responded to that. If you don't know, this is Stan Martin.
When I was
had a very open door policy. They would go in here and say, you know, here's an opportunity to create EDI expos. Somebody will do it if we don't, like Reed or someone. And he looked at me and said, that sounds interesting. Write down a few more details, give them to me tomorrow. He didn't say a week later or 2 weeks. He said tomorrow. I did, and he looked at it, made a couple suggestions the second day, and said, let's go with it. Let's put this together as a national program. And he said, I don't want to make money. EDI doesn't make money. I want it to be something to do with the vendors and the customers. And, I don't know if those are the points.
And now all these years later, you guys all know what the ADI Expos have come from, and I didn't know it until an hour and a half ago. Gentleman over there is the intelligence behind creating the ADI Expos because he recognized a need in the marketplace, and he had a boss who was self-confident enough, who mentored well enough that was created. I think that's a cool story. And thanks. I hope I didn't embarrass you by giving you credit for coming up with the brilliant idea for ADI Expos. Thanks, Dan.
So one of the bullets that we uncovered when we were doing some research on this is intelligence also incorporates smart decision-making and effective communicating. So what, Stan, you were talking about, you demonstrated that, you communicated that, because a leader needs to synthesize, interpret, and communicate information to be successful. So that goes to what you were saying, Stan. Remember Defender Direct? Defender Direct was the largest ADT dealer in the US, I guess in North America, until they were purchased, right? Dave Lindsay, thank you. Dave Lindsay and his wife ran that organization, and we're friends with them, sold millions of dollars a year of equipment to them when I was at GE and UTC. When you went to work there, they would hire people. They said, we're not looking for technicians, we're looking for people that can talk to people. We'll train them to be technicians, right? When you went to work there, the first 4 or 5 days of training, nothing about the company. It was about them. To your point, what do you like? What don't you like? How much debt are you in? Really? How much debt am I in? Yeah, we're going to help you get out of debt. We have a library next door to us here. We want to take you in and show you that library. We have credit counselors here that will help you get out of debt. We have, whatever your denomination is, at that so Defender was a Christian company, and they said that coming in. They said, we are a Christian organization. Whatever you practice, you could practice, but here the do's and the don'ts happen on our facility, right? It was amazing to watch how they train their people. So when I would talk to employees at their annual Christmas party, and I said, tell me the best thing about working here. I'm happier at home. I'm out of debt. I bought a home. Dave Lindsay is the best. And I said, would you ever leave here? And they looked at me like, are you crazy? Why would I want to leave? So when we talk about intelligence, of course, we're bringing this back again, right? We're figuring out what motivates people. And if you could come into a company, if I come to work for you, Jamie, and Jamie says, Kirk, I know you're relocated up here from Lake Oswego, Oregon, up to Washington. What are you guys doing this weekend? Could my wife and I have you over for a barbecue and we'll take you around and show you some things? Those are the sort of things that leaders do, intelligent leaders do, right? So we're not talking about IQ intelligence. We're talking about things that you do to make people feel a part of your family. And if it's not happening today, go make it happen. Whether or not you're the CEO, the president, or a brand new sales manager, make it happen at your company.
You all have people that are smarter than you working in your organization, intellectually. Yeah, so Do they know that you think that?
Oh, absolutely.
Are you secure in deferring to their wisdom, their intellectual wisdom? But that's both a hypothetical and a real question.
Not as much as I should be.
What's that?
Not as much as I should be.
Not as much as I should. Probably all of us. Not as much as I should be. That kind of goes back to the insecurity, which was, I think, was number 2. Mark, were you going to go ahead?
I was just going to say, I think this probably falls in intelligence. There's also, and maybe a personality thing, but it's the amount of information that someone needs to synthesize to make a decision, and different people can make decisions at different points. And the less amount of information that you need to make a decision allows you to have more time until that, whatever that thing is that's approaching you is going to impact you, right? So, if we all, whatever it is, if you can see it coming far down the road and you can make decisions to mitigate that or whatever, then you're going to have more time to navigate whatever that thing is. But there are some people that they can't make a decision until they have 100% of the facts, and very rarely do we have 100% of the facts, right? So then that makes it really difficult. You get in sort of analysis paralysis kind of situation. And so I don't know if that goes to intelligence or...
Well, I think it does. A leader I think it does. A good leader exhibits that, is intelligent enough to make the... Let me say it a slightly different way in just a couple words. A long time ago, I had a boss who said it this way: I want to, and I've tried to practice this, I want to, when faced with making a decision, I want to research the heck out of it, not over-research, but I want to research the heck out of it. I want to make a decision as quickly as I can make a decision. I want to communicate that decision to my workforce and engage them and motivate them and be an ambassador to that point and execute the heck out of it, but be fast enough and intelligent enough to go, it was the wrong decision. Let's course correct. And I think sometimes we forget the course correct part. And we keep saying, no. I think an intelligent leader, not intellectual IQ, but an intelligent leader is smart enough to go, you know what? We got to go in a little bit of a different direction. Not start selling refrigerators, but we got to go in a little bit different direction.
Yeah, I have people who work with me and people I work with that are certainly more intelligent, and it's exciting to have the opportunity to learn from them and vice versa, and to share ideas. I've found that a lot of times it's a matter of perspective. So those that are highly intelligent, engaged, have fantastic ideas, I'm always excited to give them additional perspective or access to other parts of the company that they don't deal with on a day-to-day basis. Because you can have a small idea that's great within a silo, and I like seeing the fruits of applying, their intellect to a higher vantage point. And I think that's where some of the larger change comes from, is once you can see, get higher up in the air and see how things interact, they have a fantastic understanding of their area of responsibility. And when you can show, how those departments work together, you get better ideas, you get better change and innovation out of that employee, and I think more engagement and a better chance of retention.
In full disclosure, his name's Tom Ingalls. Tom was a colleague of mine at Select Security, and he's now with Brinks. And Tom's one of those really smart people who intellectually intimidates the heck out of me. But I have enough self-confidence to know that if Tom talks, I'm going to listen. The challenge isn't what comes out of Tom's mouth. The challenge is he's so smart, he keeps exhibiting how smart he is. And I mean that in the most... and he and I have had this conversation. So I'm saying this in front of him. So the challenge as leaders is, how do you manage that? Because this is a guy that wakes up with 1 million ideas in the day that are going to be better for the business. And you got to give a guy like that the opportunity I think as an intelligent leader, give a guy like that the ability to have a forum. So now it's not my problem, it's Bob Grove's challenge.
I just wanted to point out that you threw a stapler at me last time.
So, what's the statute of limitations? So
With a
Lucas.
smile on my face, right?
Lucas.
I think part of what everyone's saying is part of leadership is you're creating a vacuum for somebody to walk into. And some of that vacuum is what's the strength that somebody has, and you're creating an opportunity, you're opening a way for them to walk into that, right? Because as a leader, you shouldn't be the answer person for everything. As a leader, you need other people around you that can have strengths that you don't have, because otherwise you're limiting the people that you're leading, right? You're putting a lid on them. So what I'm saying is if I was leading him, I'm going to create opportunities for him to use his ideas in his brain, and I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to kind of be the coach and facilitate it all and do it like that.
Right. So some of it's just suppression of your own ego. You have to be able to give up a little bit there. Well, I'll throw this in. I had 4 years ago, I had an HR manager that came and I said, we need to change our culture, because those lower parts that are at another level we're not getting it. So, but as an example of that is equipment selection committee.
Yep.
Okay. And I have people that call me all the time and they want to deal with me. In fact, there's an over-under going on right now, and I told that to all of our one-on-one meetings. How many people am I going to have to bring back? So my GM and my sales manager have to listen to how many presentations that we go through. So we talk about refrigerators and one, taking the over-under on, right? But at the same time, with this equipment selection committee, which I believe I heard from you several years back, as well as ESA, having this, I have to subject myself to the fact that I'm not as smart anymore when it comes to technology or other services. And what can people from sales side, from the equipment side, from upper management can come together to say, here's where we should be headed with our equipment and or our services, and how does it affect inventory training and same product across the whole company, so we don't have different people making decisions for what. So those are little areas that I've seen just in our own.
So Mike, you said the word culture, and I think that's really appropriate. And I want to end the section, if you're okay with that. I want to end the section by focusing a little bit more on culture. When your employees, your smart employees, come up with these great ideas, it goes into a funnel, right? It's like if I went back to Mark and say, hey, Mark at DMP, I want you to do this and this and this and this. He's going to take it back to his engineering team and his product team, and they're going to prioritize that, predicated on what the needs of the entire group are, their ability to execute on that, and their ROI, right? There's a bunch of other things that go into that. You need to develop that same process in your company because, and I'll come back to culture in a minute, because what happens is smart guy A wakes up and comes to you on a Monday with 5 ideas, and smart girl B comes to your company on Tuesday with a whole bunch of ideas. And now you go, oh, we want to implement all this. And down the road on Friday, you have 25 other employees going, what are we doing? Are we selling refrigerators? What are we doing? So you need to make sure that these ideas fit within your culture. When Steve and I go into companies, and George DeMarco, who's also a consultant here, when we go into companies, the first thing we look at is we look at the culture of the company, and are they in alignment with that culture? Because then decision-making process becomes a lot easier. Once again, I go back to Mark Hellerberg, and I go, hey, Mark, I want to do this. Mark can say, sorry, we're not going to do that. We are not going to sell do-it-yourself products for under $30. That's not our market. So he knows that. So if I go to him, he's going to go, Kirk, thank you. He moves on. So make sure you develop what your key culture points are at your company and stay focused on that, because that's your funnel and that helps you get through your funnel.
One last comment on it, and I'll make this really short. Organizational alignment from you all the way through the organization as to what your core values are, what you stand for, like Lucas gave some examples, all the way to how do we measure success in the respective parts of the business. What metrics do we use to measure success? And what tactics are we going to use to achieve those success points? To me, an intelligent leader makes sure that there is real organizational alignment. And if you don't have, and here's one of my favorite two words, if you don't have a repeatable discipline in your organization as to how to convey what I just described, you need to get it. Because if you're not clear to your organization, not everybody understands what the core values are and what goals we've set for our organization, and they should. Because that's how you get organizational alignment.
And they just can't be written on the wall.
That they shouldn't be written on the wall.
Yeah.
Because if they're on the wall, that people forget about it.
Yeah, you talk about it, you engage, you ask people what that means to them. Going back to the Defender approach, right? Defender Direct. First 5-6 days, talking about them. How can we help you be a better person? And then we'll figure out how to be a better company.
All right, Kirk, lead us into relevant knowledge.
Was that a slam?
No, that was because, because you've got some really good thoughts on that one.
So, relevant knowledge. We've all come to this industry from different skill sets. I mean, Angela, you were an electrician, certified electrician, okay? She has skill level that I don't have. I'd kill myself, right? But
he's not kidding.
I'm not kidding. But the reality is that, well, I'll give you an example. June 6th, 1944. What was that? D-Day. Who were the Germans mostly afraid of? Which general were they mostly afraid of? Patton. George S. Patton. What did Patton do on D-Day? Anybody know? Patton was a decoy. Patton was a decoy. They sent him 100 miles north and put together rubberized tanks, right? Which was ingenious because when the Germans flew over, they saw those massive tanks and troop movements, all this. Patton was a decoy. Was Patton happy? Hell no. He was pissed. He was pissed. He wanted to be there at D-Day, right? But he followed orders. He was up there. Now, why do you think Eisenhower chose him to do that? Because the Germans believed he had relevant knowledge to be able to kick their tush. So he was used as a decoy. And when we think of relevant knowledge, we don't all have to be experts walking in the door. But at the end of the day, we don't have to pretend we're experts, right?
Yeah, so as a leader, I'm going to read you the definition that we were using as we began to think about this. Just listen to the definition. Give me 1 second. One of the things that goes with bald is you can't see anymore. Going beyond intelligence, an effective leader must also have relevant knowledge for the role. An effective leader must also have relevant knowledge for the role. This includes technical, theoretical, and conceptual knowledge. The person must also have the ability to conceptualize. He or she must know the entire operation well enough to lead the team.
To execute.
There's a whole lot of kernels in there. So do you as a leader, do you have to be the most technically competent? No. Now, some of you are. I mean, I've been kidding aside. I mean, Kirk called out Angela. I've been with Angela over the years, and I've heard her on the phone telling an installer how to do an installation. But Angela's real value to her organization isn't about being the best installer. It may have been a couple years ago, but her real value is being a theoretical and conceptual leader with the ability to conceptualize and knowing the entire operation well enough to lead the team. My question to you is, do you know the entire operation well enough to lead the team?
And if you don't, do you know where to get it? My assumption is that's the reason you're at ESA leadership. That's the reason you're going to go to ESX in June. What are the dates, George? 14th and 17th in Fort Worth. That's the reason you're a member of ESA. That's the reason you go to your manufacturing partners for assistance, because you know where to get that information.
As you're sitting here right now, is there someone on your team that should be here?
Yeah.
CFO says to CEO, what do we do if we train everybody and they leave? CEO says to CFO, what do we do if we don't train anybody and they stay? So I see y'all thinking, and it's good that you're thinking, because my view is there are opportunities for education that more than just you should have the ability to participate in.
We are both not the same leaders today we were 25 years ago. We talked about this on that long Sunday call. That was a fun call. We are not the same leaders today. It is a constant evolution. We're plugging ESA and we're plugging ESX, and we should be, right? Because that's where I hedge my bet that I'm going to get better, that I'm going to be challenged, that I'm going to listen to people that are better than I am. I'm going to take that back and implement that. I say I'm a one-man operation. That's really a lie. I really have 4 people. But the reality is, if I can help them be better, then I get better. And this is the environment to do it in. And I just want to do a final thought, and then we'll open it up for everything else. And this may not be good news, but stay with me for a minute. These 6 traits we talked about in the morning and the afternoon are not the end all. That's the cost of doing business. That's foundationally what you need to do. I said in the first session that last week, Sherry, my wife, and I went and heard a speaker talk about George Washington. He is also a PhD, and he runs the Mount Vernon Historical Association, which is owned by the Mount Vernon Women's Association. I forget the actual term, but they've owned it for the last 130 years. No public money is used for Mount Vernon. None. Where George Washington ultimately died and his home. I've been studying him as a leader, and I won't go into all of his traits, but I will tell you that all of these things we're talking about today, he had every one of those, which allowed him to set the stage for the United States of America, and including the Constitution. Matter of fact, for his homework, he read the Constitution and wrote saying President, 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 meaning what he was responsible for and what he was not responsible for. So he was setting his own parameters. Every one of the states was trading in different currency. We had Pennsylvania that was still trading in Dutch or German currency. We had, even when we had the United States of America. So he set up the common defense of the United States. When he took office, do you know how many soldiers we had in the U.S.? Anybody know how many soldiers we had when he took his presidency? This is after the Revolutionary War. 600 soldiers. So he set up defense, right? You couldn't do it with a 600. He had to get everyone, he had to get everybody on the same page. He had to make sure all the states understood what needed to be done. He set up the executive branch, and he said, I'm only going to be here for 2 terms, and I'm out. And you can't call me Excellency. That's what they want to call him. Sorry, John. Can't call you Excellency. And I maintain that he could have never done any of that if he didn't possess these 6 skills and these 6 leadership traits. Don't feel bad. We're not going to be George Washington. We're not going to do it. This is a constant evolution. I am 67, just turned 67 this week, 67 years old, and I'm still perfecting my leadership skills every single day. And the day you stop perfecting, the day you stop learning, is the day you hang it up. So you need to listen to people like this guy here, like George DeMarco, like all the other leaders in this room that can help you get to where you need to be and get your company to where it needs to be. So with that, we want to open it up for any.
I got one parting.
Yes, sir.
One parting thought. You all know who Steve Jobs is, right? Have you read it? Have you read the Steve Jobs book, which is about that thick? If you haven't, read it. I'm dead serious. As a leader, read it. You're gonna learn. Have you read it, Lucas? I thought you were shaking your head. Yes. You're gonna learn more about things not to do as a leader. I'm serious. Not to do as a leader for your organization as you are about things that you should do as a leader. And there's lots of both. But it is a story of disastrous leadership style where carcasses were left on the side of the road, largely because there was a brilliant guy who had so much relevant knowledge, but he didn't have most of the other leadership traits. Now, the good news for that company is there were other people who hung in there, and there's people now that have a different style. Okay, so I'm telling you that to set up my closing comment.
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
Hold on a second. There is out there in social media, and you can look it up, there's out there in social media a probably 2-paragraph last Steve Jobs comments before he died. This isn't in the book. It's out there, and there's a photo of him standing there, and he looks like he weighs about, no kidding, looks like he weighs about 75 pounds. And it's obvious that he's ready to die. And they captured his closing comments. And I won't do justice to it, but his closing comments were all that stuff that I thought was important, and the journey that I was on and how hard I was driving. I'm only now too late realizing that when I'm laying in my hospital bed, all I have beside me is the little table beside me, and I don't have deep relationships like I wish I had. Guys, gals, we're talking about leadership here. In my view, learn that lesson before you're standing there weighing 75 pounds and it's too late.
And let me give you my closing comment. And I didn't say this in the first session. I have enjoyed more negative leaders than positive ones in my career. I talked about the positive ones today, right? Didn't talk about the negative ones. And I'm not going to talk about the negative ones. But they've done, and I've said, and I've been pleased that I had them, because it allowed me to yin and yang. It allowed me to see how I didn't want to be. If you take those comments along with Steve's comments about at the end, making sure it's the personal relationships, I've never known a leader that can lead without truly engaging in relationships. It's really about that. It's what about this association is.
It is.
It's about what it continues to be. And I will tell you, the credit to Jamie, Mike, John, Merlin, everyone on the board of directors. Raise your hand if you're on the board of directors at ESA. Raise your hand.
Or were.
Or were. Pass. I will tell you, those people in board meetings are working all the time how to make this organization more relevant and more important to you all the time. They never rest on their laurels. I was honored to come and listen to Steve present at the board meeting and then sit in the board meeting. These people are working their rear end off for you. So when we talk about leadership development, hedge your bet with ESA. These people are doing a great job. So we want to, Steve and I want to thank you both very, very much.
Somebody asked me after the first one, one of the ESA professional staff asked me, so how'd it go? I said, well, Kirk and I had fun. We hope the audience, so hopefully it was fun for you. Hopefully there was a nugget of perspective there or some things. I mean, even Stan at lunch today, he said, I sat there listening to you guys and I was reflecting back on all those years and all the stops along the way. And if nothing else, we hope we provoked thought. So Stan, that's exactly what I needed to hear. We provoked thought. So any questions? Look at this, we're right on time. Any questions or comments or feedback or anything? Okay, then no surprise, the guy who's going to give feedback is Tom Ingalls. Go ahead, Tom. I don't have a stapler, Tom, so you're safe.
I was just curious, and to be fair, you threatened to throw it. Do you think there's a systemic problem within middle management or even upper management to view that position as a job instead of a craft that needs to be honed in the same way that a craft would need to be honed if you're a technician or you're an electrician? I've just noticed that there are times where you get the job and your feeling is, I should go through these steps and I should do what's required instead of constant learning, engagement, improvement, listening. So I didn't know if that was something that you see or have seen in your career.
Did you throw that softball to me because you like me?
I felt bad about the comment.
Okay. So here's my short answer. And this applies to every position in your company, including yours. The best athletes in the world maintain their position as being best athletes in the world, not because they're just talented, it's because they practice their craft. Doctors have to have continuing education. Lawyers have to have continuing education. The best, Tiger Woods was on the driving range after he finished a round of golf, and I could give Tom Brady eats like some subhuman. He eats stuff, I don't even know what it is. They practice their craft. My answer to your question is, not just in our industry, but I only speak to the industry, I think Tom is spot on. I don't think we practice our craft enough. I don't think we continuously educate enough. And as middle managers and senior leaders, I think that's part of all of these things. We need to practice our craft. And our craft in this case is becoming a better leader. So Tom, I agree.
And it becomes muscle memory, right? You need to consistently work on that. For those of you that don't know, I was in law enforcement, and I've been involved in on-duty shooting. Instinctively, somebody was firing at me. What do? I fired back, right? It was all instinctive, never thought. It was training. Education. It's being heavily involved again in doing what we do. You guys have been great. Thank you very, very much. We're here as long as you need us.
Thanks, guys.